Hi, I'm Bryce Crittenden.
Hi, I'm Meg DeForest, and welcome back to EPL's Overdue Finds.
Meg, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. Glad to be back here. It's always a fun day when I get to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks again for filling in for Caroline on today's episode. And today's episode would also be an episode that I know Caroline would love to be a part of. And it's something that we've talked about a lot on the show. And that is today we are talking all about Back to the Future, because we love time travel here on Overdue Finds. We've talked about our favorite time travel titles in the past. On July 5th was the 35th anniversary of the release of the very first Back to the Future movie. Meg, I assume you're a big fan like I am of the series?
I am a big fan. Actually, my husband's nickname in high school was Biff because he looked like Biff Tannen in high school. So I have a very personal connection to the films.
So has he called you Butthead?
No, he has resisted the urge. I mean, mostly because I would not take it well. But
No, I would hope not.
No.
No, we're gonna have a blast today chatting all about Back to the Future. We're probably going to touch on the sequels and some of the other stuff related to the series. And joining us today again, official friend of the show, Kate Gibson. Kate, welcome back to Overdue Finds. How are you?
I'm good. I'm back. Thanks for having me again.
Of course. It's funny because we did a call out to staff just to see who might be interested in coming on. And I was, I guess, a little bit surprised that you were a big Back to the Future fan, because I know you're a big Doctor Who fan. Mm-hmm. Not that you can't be fans of two different franchises at all, but yeah, it's nothing that's really come up in our conversations before. But you're a huge fan of the series?
Yeah, I always have been growing up. They were a part of my childhood. So yeah, when you did the call out, I jumped on the opportunity. I was surprised that not more people did. Not that I'm pointing fingers at the rest of our crew, but I'm happy to have the chance to be here and chat.
We're happy to have you back, but I know a lot of our staff are really busy right now with a lot of our branches reopening. So if this is the first time you're hearing about it, as of us recording this, I know the vast majority of our branches are reopening. So you can go in and you can finally collect those holds that you've been wanting to pick up probably for the last 4 months anyway. I know I've got a bunch. So yeah, a big shout out to all of our staff who are working so hard behind the scenes and with reopening and following all those safety measures with COVID. So yeah, big shout out to them, and big thanks to also all of our listeners and customers who have been so patient with us through all of this. But before we get started today with our Overdue Finds, I also just want to quickly give a big shout out and big thank you as well to everyone who joined me on Zoom this past week for our very first EPL trivia night. It was part of our summer reading club for adults and teens. Congratulations to Haley, who hopefully you're listening, was our very first trivia winner. So Kate, I know you were involved with coming up with a lot of those trivia questions, and I know you came up specifically with a lot of our music questions. That was a tough round.
Good.
Yeah, they were challenged.
My questions, right? You didn't even have some of my hardest questions in there.
I didn't, no. But the vast majority of your questions were included. So yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined me on Zoom for that. We had a great time, and yeah, hopefully we can do that again here in the next few weeks. But yeah, Meg, I think next time we'll definitely have to include you.
Yeah, I was double booked, but I would really love to be in there. In grad school, we had a trivia team called Batgirl Was a Librarian. So, you know, I don't know why that was our team name, but it's very important trivia. Trivia and librarians are peas in a pod.
It is. That's definitely one of the coolest librarians, definitely, in pop culture. So you can't go wrong with Batgirl.
No, exactly.
So let's move on to our Overdue Finds for today's episode. Kate, how about you? What have you been enjoying lately?
Well, I was thinking about this. So last time I was on, which was more near the beginning of isolation. I was saying I couldn't read much. I don't know. I've gotten a bit better over this time, but I'm still like not delving too much into too heavy stuff. I've been doing a lot of podcasts, which I don't know if it's a cool thing to talk about other podcasts on this podcast.
Hey, we did a whole episode about a year ago just on other podcasts. So without a doubt, you can definitely plug away.
Yeah, so I completely binged the entire series of The Adventure Zone, which it's at least 100 episodes. I don't know if either of you know that. It's a sort of a D&D podcast, though they do other game types as well. But it started out as a D&D podcast with these three brothers, the McElroy brothers, and their dad playing. And it is absolutely brilliant. Probably one of the best stories I've ever, in any form, consumed. So I would highly recommend it. That being said, they do a whole bunch of other podcasts too. The whole family do multiple podcasts, and it's kind of their life. So I recently started listening to Sawbones, which is one of the brothers and his wife talk about medical history. And actually, I started reading the book, the Sawbones book. And so that one is available through the library. So it's written by Justin McElroy and Dr. Sydney McElroy. And they talk or go through the weird and wonderful world of medicine throughout history. So it's really interesting that way. And some of their podcasts recently have touched on COVID and all that as well. So it's been really interesting. So that's kind of what my life has been focusing around recently.
I listened to an episode of Sawbones that was about World of Warcraft and how they used it to like map plagues because there was some like computer virus in the game, but then the way that it was responded to by players, they actually had like researchers, medical scientists who used it as a way to like look at how plagues spread and how people respond. So yeah, it's a really cool podcast for sure.
Check it out.
All right, Meg, how about you? What have you been enjoying lately?
Well, to the surprise of probably no one who's been listening to the last few episodes, I was reading a fantasy book. And so this one is called An Easy Death by Charlene Harris. So this is True Blood, if you know that. So this is her new series. And it's kind of an alternate history, but with magic. And so it's sort of what happened if the U.S. and Roosevelt had sort of been assassinated and they had never left the Great Depression, but also there's magic. So the United States has sort of fallen apart. There's not a United States anymore. There's sort of Texoma, which is Texas and Oklahoma and parts of New Mexico have been taken over by Mexico. And there's the Holy Russian Empire because the Tsar came over instead of being assassinated. So there's like Russians that have taken over part of the country. So it's just kind of a really interesting take. And as we're watching the US maybe not be doing so well, this was just sort of a funny take on it. But it's much more about this a gunner who sort of has a hired gun, and she goes around trying to solve problems and keeps getting pulled into these magic things that she sort of thinks is nuts, and she doesn't really want to be involved in magic. She's kind of suspicious of that. Definitely worth a check out. It's very fun.
That sounds really cool. I'm a sucker. All probably listeners know this who listen on a regular basis, but I'm a sucker for alternative history tales. And that sounds really cool anyway, especially with and then adding on that magic element. I'm not normally a big fantasy fan, or I guess reader per se, but that sounds really neat. So is that has she released other books in that series yet, or is that just like the first
So
one?
That's the first one. The second one in the series just came out, and I think she's already writing the third. So it will be another series, sort of like True Blood. So for people who like those long series where you get to know characters, that's definitely one to check out.
Very
Nice.
cool.
That sounds really fun. I'll have to check that out. So, Meg, we were talking about this before we hit record today because the headphones you use are gamer headphones, and they're pretty awesome. So, I was mentioning to you how I guess during this whole pandemic, I've been playing way more video games than I ever have. And it's funny because I've almost been in more contact with friends because of, I guess, the pandemic, and I'm playing online games with them. So the game that I've been playing is Call of Duty Modern Warfare. So it's kind of interesting because over the last few months, I've been trying to recommend items on this show that you could easily access from home where you didn't, obviously, since you couldn't go pick up holds. But now that you can go back in and pick up holds, you can actually borrow this game from us. So what's really cool about it is available on both Xbox and on PlayStation. And the game that you can borrow has the full campaign, where you play as a CIA and British SAS officer who team up with rebels in a fictional country and try and fight those dastardly Russian forces who have invaded their country. The campaign is fun, obviously. Lots of levels. The graphics are amazing. It's obviously a first-person shooter if you're into that sort of thing. But the real fun part about this game is an option called Warzone, and that's what I've been playing online. So even if you can't get yourself a physical copy of the game from us, let's say you're waiting on hold, you can actually download Warzone for free and play it online for free as well against anybody else online across the world. There's all these different game modes. I'm a big fan of Plunder myself, where me and my friends go around and just try and collect as much money as we possibly can. So that's what I've really been doing over the last 3-4 months here at home on quarantine anyway. So it's a fun game.
Nice.
No, that's awesome.
All right. So let's talk about why we're here today. Of course, it is the 35th anniversary of Back to the Future.
That hurts my brain.
I know.
How has it been 35 years?
So
I know. I know, it's insane. It's funny because it almost seems like every year there's like this big anniversary for like certain movies. Like I think the one that kind of caught my eye the other day was Terminator 2 was released in 1991. So next year that'll be 30 years. And I remember that was the very first R-rated movie I went to in the movie theaters. And I'm just like, I'm blown away. Like time flies way too fast. So yeah,
also the 20th anniversary of Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That hurts my head too.
Yeah. We'll probably that reminds me, Kate.
I'm
2001.
Yes.
We will have a
super far in advance.
We will definitely have a look back at Lord of the Rings for sure.
That's true.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
A good fact.
Okay, but
anyway, but that's not to this. No. Hold it.
Stay tuned. In 2021, we will have a Lord of the Rings episode for everybody. But today is our Back to the Future episode, and it is the 35th anniversary. So before we get talking about the film and the whole series, I just thought I'd share some interesting stats about the movie. So it was originally released in theaters on July 3rd, 1985, and went on to gross over $200 million in its initial theater run. And it actually had a budget of $14 million originally, so not bad. No big surprise, but it had a 96% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I was able to track down a negative review of it, though, that I'd like to quickly share. It was from the LA Times, and film critic Sheila Benson said, "It's big, cartoonish, and empty, with an interesting premise that is underdeveloped and overproduced."
Ouch.
So, yeah. That review really doesn't stand the test of time too much. But it was also nominated for 4 Oscars, including Best Screenplay, Best Sound, Best Original Song for the awesome Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News, and ended up winning Best Sound Effects Editing. So it is an Oscar winner. And of course, some people may or may not know, but filming actually started with Eric Stoltz playing Marty McFly before being replaced partway through filming by Edmonton's own Michael J. Fox. And of course, there was 2 sequels, a cartoon series, and video games based on the film. Of course, it's all incredible. It's an incredible series and film. We're all fans, as we've mentioned. But Kate, do you remember roughly maybe how old you were when you first watched it? I think we're all too young to be we saw it in the theaters. We're too young for that. But roughly how old were you, and have you always been a fan?
You know, I've been thinking about this. I don't remember a time where I didn't know it. So I was 3 when it came out, giving away my age there. So I definitely didn't see it in theaters. But by the time the second one came out, which was when I was 7, I saw that in theaters. And so sometime in between 3 and 7, we rented it from the video store and watched it many times, because by that point I knew it quite well. So I don't remember it. I don't remember the impact it had the first time I saw it. I was saying to you guys before we started recording, I did rewatch it in prep for this, and my roommate Megan, who I've talked about before, it was her first time watching it just last night, and that blew my mind. She thought she was going to join me just for a few minutes. She was packing to leave, and she was like, "Oh, maybe I'll watch a bit." She stayed for the whole thing and loved it. So I think that just is a testament to how good that movie is. So yeah. No, so I don't remember seeing it. I remember the impact of seeing the second one in the theater. That blew me away, especially, and maybe we'll get to this later, but especially the part at the end where it was like, Back to the Future will return in spring 1990, I think it was, with part 3. And then it showed a little clip of part 3, because as a kid, I like the idea that they'd already filmed and were preparing for part 3 and it was upcoming was just so exciting. It ended on such a cliffhanger. So that I remember, and just loving it.
Yeah. I think in today's Marvel universe, that might be something that kids today don't know how weird that was, but like it was, and Lord of the Rings being filmed all at once back in the day, that was not a thing that happened.
So yeah, loved it.
Yeah, and like you said, that was like pre-internet. So like I was the same thing as you, Kate, where I was just a little too young to have seen the first one in the theaters, but I did see part 2 and 3 with friends in the theaters, and I do remember the same thing at the end of 2 where it was like they'll return, and basically there was this like 2-minute kind of trailer for the third movie, and you're like, oh my god, like that's we'll be seeing that before next summer, so that's amazing. But yeah, it was totally mind-blowing at the time. Meg, do you remember roughly when you had first seen it?
Yeah, similar. I think I probably saw it on video. My dad was kind of a movie buff, and so he would just rent movies and watch anything on TV ever, and so I sort of was exposed to all sorts of random movies as a kid, and so I'm sure that I just watched it with him, and I don't have a sort of specific memory of it, but it's sort of formative, right? You sort of don't realize how many things that we expect from time travel movies now or sort of came from this, and so I think that's always kind of interesting.
Yeah, and as Kate mentioned too, like it seems like it's always been there. Like I don't remember a time being like, I want to watch this movie or recall first watching it, but it's just always been there kind of throughout our lives. And it's one of those great movies that's a total fallback, where if you're flipping through the channels on maybe a rainy like Saturday afternoon and you see it's on, you're stopping to watch it. There's so many iconic characters in this movie and actors as well. Does anybody here, I know Kate, you went back and you watched this again for the first time in a while, but was there any performances that really stood out for you while you were watching this again, or maybe from your roommate?
Well, the one that always stands out to me, I mean, obviously Marty and Doc, they're great, but it's Crispin Glover. Every time I see that guy in anything, Crispin Glover, who plays Marty's dad, is amazing. He is such a quirky guy, such a quirky actor. The way he just embodies that awkwardness of the character. Yeah, anytime I see Crispin Glover act, I am blown away by that man. So that one, I really enjoyed it this time around as well.
Meg, how about you?
I always love the Johnny Be Good scene. That's like my favorite scene. It certainly gave me high expectations of high school dances that were not lived up to by my real life experience.
Yeah, between that and Grease, like
I know.
What? Where are these?
That was not what high school dances looked like by the time I got there. I mean, yeah, that's always kind of stuck with me. It's just such a great scene of the music, right? I love the music from this film. And I mean, obviously, I don't know where our hoverboards are. I'm very disappointed that the hoverboards have not been one of the things to come to life for us. There was some, I think, special on one of the DVDs that was sort of implying that the hoverboards actually did exist and that it was safety concerns from parents that didn't let it be released. And so there's always these like rumors that maybe there are hoverboards. And so, I'm going to fight for those.
Yeah, the hoverboard. I know what you're talking about, actually, because I have the DVD set, and yeah, it's on there, and it's totally tongue in cheek. But there's all these conspiracy theories online that these things are actually real, but yeah, parents were holding them back for some stupid reason because they'd be dangerous. And don't get me wrong, as a 10-year-old, when I first saw Back to the Future Part 2, I would have probably killed myself on them, or I can't imagine random kids just flying around on those things all the time. There would be so many accidents. Kate, you touched on something really interesting too with Crispin Glover, and I think he's definitely a very underrated actor. He's from anything that you've ever read online about him, very eccentric. But his role as George McFly is incredible. Just, you look at him obviously at the very beginning, and he's just kind of like this down on his luck dad. You can tell life has just given him maybe not the best hand, and he's got a family who maybe doesn't quite appreciate him enough, or this guy's been bullied his entire life and still continues to be bullied by Biff Tannen, who for some reason I think he's working for him at the beginning of the movie.
Biff's his boss at the beginning.
Small town.
It's just
still doing his homework for him.
Yeah, exactly. Just he's got to get that report in for Biff or something like that. It's just, and he hasn't put on that extra coat of wax on his vehicle. Poor George McFly. But it's interesting because Crispin Glover, I think he kind of gets forgotten about because he ends up being recast in part 2. I guess he wanted, like, from what I've read, he wanted way too much money to come back in the second movie. Like, I think Michael J. Fox numbers maybe. And, the producer, Steven Spielberg, whoever, was like, no, that's okay. They ended up casting a lookalike, put this guy in all this makeup, and that's why you see him just like floating upside down in those future scenes.
Yeah. I don't think when I was a kid seeing it for the first time in theater, I don't think I realized that it was a different actor. Years later, I found out, and I was just like, "What?"
Yeah. I'm pretty sure there was a lawsuit too. Like I think, sued them for using his likeness, and so there was a whole bunch of other stuff about like how productions can use the likeness of actors if they're not bringing the actor back, and all of that I think came out of that lawsuit. So
yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, one actor, and Meg, you touched on it because you said your husband's nickname was Biff, but Thomas F. Wilson playing Biff Tannen in all of those movies, obviously starting with the first one. He's incredible throughout the whole series. A lot of times in movies when you have the villain, and there is like a series of movies, they're kind of one and done. Maybe they'll come back for maybe the second one, but to have it kind of shows how great of a job he did that he plays this iconic villain in all 3 of the movies. Like, I imagine it would have been just as easy to maybe go in a different direction with other villains. Like maybe there's another scientist who maybe wanted Doc's time machine or something like that. You could have gone in so many different directions with the sequels. Of course, we'll chat about 2 later on, but when he plays the alternate 1985 Biff Tannen owning the sleazy casino, and then Mad Dog Tannen in part 3, he has some of the funniest lines throughout the whole series. So I love it.
I think there's something universal. Like, I think everybody had that bully or that person in their life who had that Biff kind of quality. So I think it was a smart choice to stick with him as the villain, because it makes it sort of universal, where everybody knows that person who tries to get you to do the homework or is kind of a jerk about anything. So it's kind of awesome.
Yeah. Meg, when we were talking about doing this episode, we were kind of emailing back and forth about all these different ideas, and I want you to explain this to me. But there is like a lot of conspiracy theories around the movie, and you had one in particular that, as somebody who is a huge Back to the Future fan, I thought I heard about all these rumors and conspiracies, but there's one I missed. So let's hear your Dave McFly theory.
Yeah.
I need to know this.
Okay, so yes, the Dave McFly theory is that Marty is the third child of his parents, and so the theory being that in the new timeline at the end of 1, his mom says how much he loves the name and all of this. So it was obviously a really important name. Then why wouldn't they name their first son Marty? Why do they wait to name their third kid Marty? Like, you don't know you're going to have another son. You have your first kid is a son. That kid should be Marty, and therefore in the alternate timeline, Marty's name should have become Dave, which is his brother's name. So that's the theory, is that, you know, why would you wait for your third kid to give this really meaningful and important name to? So
yeah, that's an interesting point, actually. I never thought of that. So the one thing I always thought that was odd at the end of, kind of towards the end of the original movie, is when Marty, or Calvin Klein as they know him as, is mentioning that, you know, Marty's a great name. So you would think at some point, you know, the parents would have even recognized that their son kind of looks like this kid who is so important to them coming together. But as some people have pointed out online, maybe it's because that he was really only maybe part of their lives for like a week.
Yeah. I mean, trying to remember someone, even an important someone from your life 30 years ago. I'm bad at it. I would say I would definitely not remember what he looked like. It did make me think, though, maybe in the new 1985 timeline that he goes back to, does he ever say his brother's name? Does he say Dave? Or does he just say, what are you wearing? Because the guy's in a suit. I can't remember. But I'm wondering, maybe they named the first kid Calvin. And so the older one is Calvin and the younger one is Marty. Maybe. I don't know.
I like it. That's a whole new theory for...
Yeah.
Dave is gone. That's it. There's no more Dave. It's all Calvin. I like it. Yeah, that's my new headcanon. I'm sticking with that. My brother's name is Calvin now.
Yeah. That theory, just with maybe why George, or, you know, the parents don't really recognize Marty. So I found this online. I just wanted to quickly share it with you because I thought it was really interesting. The theory states that George figured it out slowly with building evidence. So if you recall, he was visited from the alien, so in 1955, so which was Marty.
Yep.
Basically, he also referenced Star Wars, I believe, as well, because he kind of, I think, introduced himself as Darth Vader. So you have two of these large space franchises. And he came home to a burned carpet and the words of Calvin echoing in his head to go easy on him, along with all the other little details. But George really never told Marty because he knew his son needed to go back in time the exact same way. So that's a pretty far out there theory, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I could see it because you think there's some suspicious coincidences there, but I don't think anybody's mind ever goes to time travel. So I can understand why that's not the option that people would assume you would go with.
Yeah, absolutely. One other one, actually, I just remembered that I read as well was, so I touched on at the very beginning about how Eric Stoltz was originally cast as Marty McFly, and he'd filmed a bunch of scenes. So there's a rumor going around that actually some of Eric Stoltz's performance is still in the movie. Rumor has it that the scene where Marty punches Biff in the diner when they're back in 1955 is actually Eric Stoltz swinging his fist. So I believe they reached out to the screenwriter, Bob Gale, to kind of get his confirmation on it. And I think basically his response was kind of like, he wouldn't know. That would be kind of up to the editors to figure that out. But he said there always is that possibility that Eric Stoltz is still in the movie a little bit. So I thought that was kind of cool.
I think I read, because I was doing a little bit of research before this, that the guy who played Biff, sorry, I forget his name.
Thomas F. Wilson.
He doesn't remember filming from that angle with Michael J. Fox. So he thinks probably if it's from a certain angle that you see it, it probably is Eric Stoltz. But yeah.
Another Eric story was that he was really annoyed. Biff was very annoyed with Eric because Eric would punch really hard because he was like this big method actor. And so Biff was really looking forward to punching him later on to get back at him. But by the time they filmed that scene, it was Michael J. Fox. And so he couldn't sort of get back at him. So he was really...
I was looking at the photos and the little clips that do exist online. It would have been such a different movie. Just the whole atmosphere he brought, but also how they dressed him. He's quite in dark clothing. He looks more like rock, like punk rock almost, like, I don't know, harder than Michael J. Fox's character. Michael J. Fox is quite light. They've dressed him in lighter colors. Just, you know, he brings more fun to it. And obviously that's what they wanted, but I can't help but imagine how the movie would have played with a darker Marty McFly. It'd be weird because there is dark elements in it, but it kind of, they pass by quick because it's a fun comedy. But like, you know, spoiler alert, Doc gets shot and you think to death like right at the beginning. That's for a comedy. You know, in the car where Biff is attacking Marty's mom, he's like trying to rape her, and that's kind of, it's passed off because the George shows up and punches him in the face and all that. But it is a weird spot that if you had a darker Marty McFly, might make all these scenes just that much darker too. I don't know. I'm glad they went with Michael J. Fox. And I also want to say, it's funny, you, Bryce, you said Edmonton boy, Michael J. Fox. Growing up, he is not an Edmonton boy. I'm sorry. I come from the West Coast, and he is a Burnaby boy. Thank you very much.
Hey, he was
in Burnaby on the
he
West
was
Coast.
born here in Edmonton, so that
All over Canada, some of us
he
might
didn't-
claim him for our own. Right.
we are claiming him as Edmontonians. We're definitely claiming him. He was born here. We have his birthright.
Yeah, going on that darkness, I heard Disney passed on it because of the incest, and they thought it was too dark of a movie, even with the more comedic elements. So it does make me laugh a bit that Disney now has Star Wars with the Luke and Leia kiss, because there's still some incest going around Disney, but
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I do believe Disney might even own that franchise now, because I think it was part of 20th Century Fox. So
Disney owns everything now.
in the end, they've probably got it now. But that's you kind of mentioned that subplot where Lorraine is absolutely infatuated with Calvin Klein and is coming on to him and everything. Like, it's interesting because, like, if you were making that movie today, I don't know if they would necessarily include that little kind of plot line in it. Like, I can't see it happening.
Yeah, I could see it happening more in a TV show nowadays. But yeah, like, movies in some ways have gotten safer. Although obviously there's lots of movies out there that aren't safe. But I don't know, for like this type of movie, yeah, I don't know if they do it.
It's funny because I think now we all kind of view Back to the Future as almost like a family comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rated PG, but like you said, there is all these dark elements in it. Doc gets shot at the beginning, Lorraine trying to sleep with her eventual future son. There's attempted rape. There is a lot of dark stuff happening in this movie, but like, there's no way, if a studio is coming out today and they're like, we're making a family PG comedy, none of this stuff is being included in it at all.
Being terrorists, like, what?
yeah, there's plutonia. There's a lot of strange elements going on here.
That's why I like the 80s. Their movies they're fun to rewatch because they would never be made now.
No.
I mean, The Goonies. Look back at The Goonies. That's a weird movie too. That would never get made now, but it is amazing.
Yeah, and same thing. I was watching 16 Candles the other week, and great John Hughes movie, but same thing. There is no way that movie is getting made today. But yeah, I mean, we can watch it today and we can kind of shake our head on it, but at the same time, if you're able to kind of separate art from kind of where we're at in today's society, you can still, I think, hopefully you can still enjoy the movie. And that's how I kind of look at Back to the Future. There are these scenes that kind of make you shake your head or raise an eyebrow, but at the end of the day, it's still one of the most beloved movies, I think, really, of all time.
With Back to the Future, these are bad guys doing these bad things. I mean, Lorraine, obviously, she's a young girl who just has this guy fall into her lap, whatever. Like, she's not deliberately trying to make out with her son. But they're shown to be bad things. Biff is the bad guy, and he gets punished for what he's trying to do. In some of the John Hughes films, it's not quite so clear cut that it's supposed to be a bad thing, and that's kind of where those movies rub me a bit more the wrong way than Back to the Future does.
Yeah, and 16 Candles, I know what you're talking about, because Anthony Michael Hall's character, essentially, Jake Ryan gives Anthony Michael Hall's character his drunk girlfriend, basically. Mm-hmm. And it's like, she's all yours for the night. Here you go. And yeah, it's
not age well. It probably shouldn't have been well back then, but it's definitely not well now.
No.
But yeah, Back to the Future to me has these weird elements, but they were never like supposed to be the good guys doing these things. So I don't know.
I think also, like, in our age of rebooting everything, I think there's something kind of awesome about the fact that, like, Back to the Future's kind of been protected, like that the creators are sort of like, no, we're not doing a part 4, we're not rebooting it, we're not, like, it's going to stay as it is, and we think that what we've done stands the test of time, and we're not going to try to, you can't recast Michael J. Fox or Doc Brown, like, you just can't do it without those actors, and there is that magic to it, and so I sort of like that too. Not that I'm against reboots, but like, I think we've gotten to a point where they're so just everywhere that I think there's kind of a magic to the fact that this is the one from the 80s, and it's not going to be doing that.
I agree. I was just gonna say, one of the things I read online, just speaking of Doc Brown and how Christopher Lloyd was cast as him, and he's perfect, obviously, but they seriously considered Jeff Goldblum for that character. I read, and I was like, I can't picture it. What would the movie have been? Such a strange thing. I mean, he's quirky as well. I first saw him probably in Jurassic Park, and to me, that's his iconic character. So I'm picturing him playing Doc. It just is wrong in my brain, but.
Kate, have you ever seen Earth Girls Are Easy? That's my like weird Jeff Goldblum movie.
I have. Like, obviously I know it, but
it's like, it's him, it's Jim Carrey, Keenan Wayans, like, it's all of these really great, Gina Davis is in it, and so it's a bizarrely like well cast terrible B movie, and again Jeff Goldblum is like this weird wacky alien in it, and so anyway, if you're looking for some like seeing Jeff Goldblum in a whole new light.
Okay. I mean, he can play multiple characters fast.
Yeah, maybe they kind of viewed Jeff Goldblum, and I can see this, if you're a casting agent in Hollywood, kind of as one of those like eccentric character actors. So maybe that's why he was maybe considered to be
Just as a
Doc Brown. The one thing that has always interested me, though, and I don't think it's really ever come out how it happened, but do you find it interesting how like Marty McFly ended up becoming friends with Doc Brown? Because you have this high school student. We don't know how long they've been friends together, but like, and it's not like Marty McFly is this like nerdy kid. Like, he seems like he's fairly popular at school. He's got a girlfriend, he's in his terrible band. But I always thought it was interesting, like, how did him and Doc Brown become so close?
Yeah, it's not that terrible a band.
I mean, if you want the answer to that, Bryce, it is in the comic books. So we were talking
Oh,
earlier about them. One of the comics that I read was the comic book, The Untold Tales and Alternate Timelines. And so that one has like the story of how they met and how they sort of became friends.
Can I ask a question? Because I mean, it makes sense in the second timeline. Like, it makes sense once Marty has gone to the past and come back, because Doc obviously knows that he's going to have to make friends with Marty, and this is all going to have to happen. So that, there'd be something there where Doc is reaching out to him or trying to manage it so they become friends and stuff. But yeah, the first time. So is the comic explaining how it happened the first time around?
Yeah, the comic is the first time. I mean, I can tell you
Spoiler alert
that Doc sort of sets up these tests to find somebody who's kind of a out of the box thinker, and Marty is trying to get something for his band. It all comes together because Biff has stolen something, an amp or something from him, and so he's trying to find a part to fix it. And so he knows.
Him and the speaker.
Yeah, so it starts with the speaker, and so it starts with him trying to find parts to fix the speaker, and he figures out Doc's clues, and so that's sort of the part where he maybe isn't smart like academically, but he's kind of got this street smarts, and so that's how he sort of figures out how to get into Doc's sort of secret lair, and that's how they kind of become friends. So
I never knew.
I know.
There we go. Learn something new today, and I have some reading to do after this.
It was very fun to read. Yeah.
Nice. So I have to ask, like, we've touched on the sequels here a little bit, but I guess I know not everybody looks favorably at sequels. I guess, what are your thoughts about them? And do you have a favorite one? Because Meg, when I was emailing you about this episode, you kind of hinted that maybe you're not the biggest fan of part 2. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. I'm not. I think my problem with part 2 is that I don't sort of get the setup of having to go to the future because his kids are screw ups. Like, I think that seems like a pretty weak reason to change the timeline. Lots of people have screw up kids, and I don't really think you need to change the time continuum because of it. And so, yeah, I don't like that part as much just because of that. I think it's sort of like, why are you even doing this? This is a silly reason to have a sequel. But because of that, I actually really do like 3 because I think 3 makes sense. Like, I think the reason that they're going back is, they've sort of set it up why they have to go back and Doc has gotten lost. And I think that has a little bit more of a real storyline about why it happened. So that for me kind of makes 3 stronger. Also, I mean, I love the Western in the past kind of thing. So that's also great.
Yeah. I never really thought about that as far as the plot line goes for part 2, because technically Doc could have just came back and been like, Marty, there's something happens to your kids and something happens to you at work. Like, just, try and be a better dad or whatever.
Yeah, be a better
just
parent.
Clue him in a little bit and just be so like, hey, you got to watch out for this person when you get older.
Doc was so adamant. Obviously, he does read the letter that Marty leaves him, but Doc was so adamant in 1955 that you can't change the timeline, that it's not meant to be tampered with. And then here he is like, come on, let's go. And it is a bit strange. And, even when I was watching it last night, it's a funny thing to tag on to the end. You could have chosen literally any reason for them to have to go to the future. So why that? Obviously, as a kid, no, I did not question that at all. I just went, cool, they're going to the future. When I thought in 89, it was 26 years in the future. Like, I can't even imagine what that'll be like. Flying cars, hoverboards. This is amazing. So I loved the second one. And I think that nostalgia colors it in my mind. So I still think it's an amazing movie, even with this fault. What I love about it is that it explores the implications of what can happen when you change the past and change the future and all that kind of stuff. And I really find that fascinating. And then I don't think I got quite what was happening when he goes back to 1985 and the mom and Biff being married and what's happening between them. I don't think I got that as a kid. Looking back now, it's, a bit weirdly dark. I just find that all a really, really interesting thing. But, I should rewatch 2 and 3 because I haven't rewatched them in ages. I wonder if I would like one over the other more. To me, they're just meld into my head as these sequels, and they're both awesome.
Yeah, I agree with you for part 2 when I was a kid. And I do still prefer part 2 over part 3. And I think maybe it's because of that whole nostalgia thing. Yeah, I think it came out when I was about 10 years old. And I thought those scenes where they go into the future were like the coolest things ever. Mm. I couldn't wait to have a hoverboard. I couldn't wait to have a flying car in 2015. As one of our past time travel episodes is called, Where's My Hoverboard? Still waiting for it. I think everybody is. But Kate, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. One of the things that I always think is really interesting about that movie is the idea where Doc talks about how there now is this alternate 1985 because of what happened. So when you go back, it's not going to be the same because Biff has this sports almanac now and everything's kind of gone to crap. So I think for a lot of movies, they could have kind of skipped over that detail and just been like, oh, we got to go back in time and get this now. But, you look back on it, it's kind of I thought it was kind of like a smart plot point to point out and explain to the audience, why it's not as easy as just going back in time right now.
We haven't brought it up yet, but when did Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure come out? What year was that?
I want to say it was like 88 or 89. So
again, sort of around the same time as maybe early 90s. I don't remember. Again, I remember seeing that time travel. Like, it's just in my brain. I've always known that one too. And it's interesting because the 2 movies present the 2 different types of time travel. Bill and Ted's is everything that's going to happen already happened. Like, you can't create multiple universes through actions in the past. Whereas Back to the Future explores the other one where it's like every action we do creates multiverses and, what kind of effect will that have? So I've always found that interesting to look at those 2 movies, which came out similar times and how they both approached time travel in that case.
Yeah, just touching on part 3, Meg. It's funny because as of a few years ago, it was definitely my least favorite Back to the Future movie. I didn't think it was a bad movie. It still probably is my least favorite one, but I thought Mary Steenburgen as Clara, the school teacher who Doc falls in love with her, it was really cool to see Doc get a love interest, because it's, we're most of the time we're focusing on Marty anyway, and he has his girlfriend. So I thought it was kind of a very sweet subplot of the movie.
Yeah, I agree. I think she's great, and it's sort of nice to have the spinster get a happy ending too.
Yeah, the thing I loved about the number 3 is the train scene. Like that train scene at the end where it's they're getting it up to speed, they're having to blow off the explosions, whatever, to get the engine running fast enough, and then it's heading towards the bridge. Like that is such a cool, iconic moment to me. And when I was watching the first movie last night again, it just struck me how great the writers were at upping the stakes. Like every, it just kept going. And, watching with Megan was hilarious because she didn't know what was coming. So, first of all, Marty, has to rush to get to where the clock tower is. And then all of a sudden the plug unplugs and he has, Doc has to go up there and it looks like he's going to do it. But, he's falling off the clock tower. Oh, and then he almost has it, but it unplugs the other end and he has to go down. Marty can't start his car. Like all these things, just one after another, raising the stakes until that final moment where he hits and goes back to the future. Like that was such a great scene. And I think they do it again in the end of the third one with the train scene as well, at upping those stakes, upping. And so I really enjoyed that part. Again, I haven't watched it in ages, but that sticks with me so much.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things about that scene is that if you look at how it's shot, it's actually almost in real time. Like when you sort of look at like those 9 minutes before he has to travel back, it's almost literally 9 minutes of screen time. So I think that sort of helps the audience really feel like these things are happening and like it's not skipped ahead or 30 minutes later. It's sort of, you feel that build because it's happening kind of as it would happen.
Yeah, and even too, hats off to the producers and writers, everybody involved with it, because there's also all these really cool, like you said, it looks like it's in real time. There's all these small attention to details that you don't notice the first time you watch it, but upon further viewings you do catch on. So like that scene in part 3 where they're kind of going across that ravine on the train, and it's essentially named after a teacher who died, which was Mary Steenburgen's character Clara. And so when Marty ends up going back to the present day in 1985, you see that the name of that ravine has been changed to something else now. Interesting details there.
Yeah, really thought about, okay, what would this actually change? It's great. I love it. It's making me smile. No, you can't see it because this is a podcast, but I'm smiling. I've been smiling this whole time talking about it.
So Meg, you touched on the comic books a little bit, but there was a cartoon series in the late 80s, early 90s. There is a video game. There are actually several video games. In addition to the comic books, have you read a lot of them, and have you seen the cartoon series or anything else kind of associated with the movie?
I haven't read or haven't seen like the cartoon series, but the comics were a lot of fun. And I did also listen to, we have an audiobook, William Shakespeare's Get Thee Back to the Future, which is basically an audio play version of the first, but in like Shakespearean language. And it's really fun because it's done like with voice actors doing all of the roles. And I definitely recommend that if you're one of those people who like those kind of retellings of things, because it's kind of fun.
Now, I also noticed in our collection, I haven't read it. Maybe Kate or Meg, you have. There's like a kid's version of Back to the Future picture book.
Yes, I bought it for my brother,
Nice.
for his kids. I haven't read it, but it looks really cute. It's a series of books, actually, done by the same artist and I guess the same writer. There's like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer one as well. I forget, there's a few others, but yeah, I think it's such a neat concept. But I haven't read it myself. I'm
really curious to see. Obviously, there's a lot of the darker plot elements that I assume have been taken out of those books. I can't see, you reading to your son or daughter and trying to explain why Lorraine is hitting on Marty.
Yeah, there's some simplified ones for Pride and Prejudice too, and I think there's some stuff that gets left out when we're translating.
it's so funny you said the cartoon. I don't remember the cartoon. Like I watched the Ghostbusters cartoon back in the day, so I would think on Beetlejuice as well. I remember the Beetlejuice cartoon. I don't remember the Back to the Future cartoon, so it seems weird to me. But
the Back to the Future one actually is pretty good. I do have the DVD set, Kate. If you want to watch it, I'll gladly lend it to you. I don't think it's in our collection, but those listeners who really want to see it, you can put in a request for us to get it, and we might be able to get it in our collection here at the library. But really, it kind of serves as almost like as an unofficial sequel to part 3. So, at the end of 3, we see Doc, Claire, and Jules and Vern kind of go off on their own adventures in the train that's now kind of a hover train, I guess. But basically, the cartoon is just that. It's like Marty's still involved, and they go back to these various adventures. So they'll go to like ancient Rome. They go back to like dinosaur time, and of course, every single time they go back, there's a different Tannen there to kind of put a wrinkle in things. It's actually, I enjoyed it. It's actually a pretty good cartoon series. One of the really neat things about it, though, is as with most cartoons in the 80s and early 90s, there always had to be some sort of like educational element to it. So at the end of the episode, you have Doc Brown, and it actually is Christopher Lloyd, and he would talk about all these fun experiments as kids you can do at home. And then demonstrating the experiments is Bill Nye the Science Guy before he becomes really popular. So, yeah, I'm sure you can find clips of it online. But I think the cartoon series ran for 2 seasons, and it is on DVD. So you can definitely go seek it out.
Speaking of Christopher Lloyd, the one thing I did take part in was the Universal Studios ride, and Christopher Lloyd played a part in that too. And so that was back in like 95 or something. We went down to California and went on the ride, which was like, I don't know, an 8-seater car that you all got in. You had to like be part of an adventure with Doc, and it moved on like pistons up and down, and you went through different time zones. And yeah, that was fun to be a part of that.
Yeah, I also experienced that ride at Universal Studios in the early 2000s, and it was funny because you could tell that ride was on its last legs just compared to all the other rides in the park. And I don't think like now if you go back to any of the Universal Studios parks that it's part of it at all, but it was a fun ride for its time.
It was. I mean, back in 95 when I went, it was pretty new, and it was very cool. Never went back. I haven't been back since then. I do remember seeing the DeLorean though, and they had the facade of the clock tower, I think, up when you did the Universal Studios tour. Yeah,
that's still part of it to this day. One other thing I just wanted to quickly touch on too was the video game, as I mentioned, because it is in our collection. It actually came out in 2010, and I believe it's kind of similar to the cartoon series, but more so this is not really an official sequel, but it kind of is. But basically the original screenwriter Bob Gale was involved in making the game. The plot of it is basically it's been 6 months since Marty witnessed Doc Brown disappear into an unknown time. The bank has begun foreclosing on Doc's home. While Marty's helping his dad clear out Doc's possessions, Marty is shocked to see a DeLorean time machine appear outside the house. Inside the car is Einstein, of course, which is Doc's dog, and a tape recorder with a message from Doc explaining how the DeLorean would return to present day should Doc fall on hard times. So kind of a cool plot line there. Yeah. So any of you video game players, we have it in our collection, and you can borrow it.
And I was going to say something. Oh, and then during this quarantine time, sorry, I'm just like rambling. You can cut this if you want. But didn't Josh Gad, isn't he doing all those reunion things? And they did one for Back to the Future. I haven't watched it, but I think he did one with Christopher Lloyd and
yeah.
Right? Am I making that up?
Sorry, Meg, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there was some quote from the actress who plays Lorraine sort of talking about how no one could have expected what the future had been and various things from that. So yeah, I haven't.
Can you imagine if they had nailed it? They were like,
no one. It would have been so unbelievable. even worse than Reagan being president, right? Can you imagine if they had predicted Trump being president? Like the Reagan president thing was already funny enough.
Speaking of the Reagan presidency thing, one of the little trivia bits I read about the first movie was I guess because they referenced President Reagan, and so I guess they had to like run it by the White House. And they didn't think that they were going to get approval, because the line in the movie that Doc Brown says is like, an actor becoming president. Like, no way that'll ever happen. But apparently Ronald Reagan got such a kick out of that line. He was a huge fan of the movie, and definitely insisted that it stay in. And it's a great moment in that first movie.
He even quoted from it in the 1986 State of the Union. He said, he had the roads where we're going. We don't need roads, he said in the State of the Union in 1986. So yeah, Reagan, big fan of Back to the Future, shockingly.
Okay, so last question before we move into our roundtable ones. But I guess where does Back to the Future rank for you as far as time travel movies or stories go? Like, Meg, do you have where does it rank for you? Do you consider other time travel tales to be better?
It's tough because this one is so good. It's definitely in my top 5, but I think like above it is probably like Umbrella Academy, which I loved, Bill and Ted, which we've talked about, Doctor Who, and then both the Star Trek, like the one going back in time with the whales, and like the new Star Trek. So yeah, I think it's probably top 5. It's really hard to say like which of those, because any day they might change, but it's sort of in that category. Because I love time travel, as we said, love that. But yeah, it's hard to say which of those is the best, because they all have parts of it that I think are really awesome.
Kate, how about you?
I agree. Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, it's funny you were saying like I'd completely forgotten Umbrella Academy has time travel, but yes, I loved Umbrella Academy, and that's great. Obviously, Bill and Ted, like between the movies, it'd be whatever day is which one I like better at the moment, and we'll see how the third Bill and Ted.
So excited
to everything when it comes out. I'm a bit nervous. I'm excited, but I'm also nervous. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, which we have talked about. Doctor Who's like, obviously the central premise is that he can travel through time and space, but its like approach to time travel is very wishy-washy at times. So if you're looking for like strict rules to time travel, Doctor Who's not going to be your most favorite thing ever. Sometimes it sticks to it. My most favorite time travel thing ever is the episode called Blink in Doctor Who. And that's the episode where you meet these monsters called the Weeping Angels. And it's just a masterclass in what cause and effect and how time works. And it's brilliant. Like, that to me is probably my most favorite time travel thing. It's just a discrete episode in Doctor Who. Doctor Who as a whole, yes, is very, very wishy-washy with time travel and what the effects might be and how much you can change and what you can't change. But yes, so Doctor Who, that episode is number 1 for me. And then after that is, yes, the rest of Doctor Who, Back to the Future, Bill and Ted. So yeah, a lot. I don't know. That's not a...
That's okay.
I love time travel. Although some people know this about me, I am not a fan of Outlander.
Me either. I always felt like a bad librarian, because like the girls I went to library school with were like, Outlander, time travel, it's the best. And I'm like, nope, can't do it.
A lot of people love it, which is great. I'm glad you love it. I'm glad you're reading the books or watching the movies, but it just doesn't do it for me, time travel wise.
Color me shocked, because I have to admit, Kate, like if I had to place a bet on you liking the Outlander series, I would have put down a ton of money, like an ungodly amount.
Sorry, Bryce, we disappointed
that's
you.
Okay.
You didn't lose actual money,
I didn't.
So I guess
that is good. That is good. I would have lost a lot. But I was going to say, as far as for me, those time travel tales go, Back to the Future is 1 for me. Close second is probably 11/22/63 by Stephen King, just because it's really good. It's not your typical Stephen King book, but just a lot of times when people talk about kind of like the different things that they would maybe go back in time and either try and prevent or change, the assassination of JFK kind of seems to always be up there. And so here you have this story about this guy who does go back in time to really try and change it and all the obstacles that are in his way. So I just thought that was a really cool story. And losing points that probably would have been higher up there for me is the Terminator franchise. Just too many sequels right now. But Terminator 2, in my opinion, is the best sequel of all time.
It is up there, yeah. That's a great movie.
All right, so let's move into our roundtable questions. Okay, so in the original script for Back to the Future, there wasn't a DeLorean, but instead the time machine was a refrigerator. So I think that was a smart change on the producer's part. So if you're writing your own time travel story, what would your vehicle or vessel of choice to travel through time? What would it be, Kate? What are you going back in time in?
You said this question, and I don't know. I mean, part of me would want to be very practical. So I was like, well, maybe like a little wooden shed that really doesn't look out of place no matter what time period I go back to. But then, you have all these fun ones, which the fridge is funny because I'm like, was that also like based off the TARDIS? Because I know Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure phone booth is because of the TARDIS, which, if you don't know what the TARDIS looks like, it's a police phone box from the 60s in England. And part of the conceit of the TARDIS is that it's supposed to blend into any time that you end up in, but it's broken, so it always looks like a police phone box in Doctor Who. So yeah, I'm like, oh, it'd be fun to have something wacky like that, but practically I'd probably want something that would just blend into the environment. So a little wooden garden shed that just would fit anywhere, and then I could open the door and pop out wherever.
That's pretty good.
Fit in. I know this, is it too practical?
Meg, how about you? What are you going back in time in?
Okay, so I called back to another very old movie from my childhood, which was, has anybody watched Bedknobs and Broomsticks? Is that?
Yeah, I love that movie. Oh my
so God. In that one, they make the bed fly because they put a bed knob on it, and so then they can just take it off, and then the machine can't travel anymore. So I was like, well, with all of us stuck in our homes, and a bed would kind of, same as Kate, like you could have a bed anywhere, and it would just look like a bed. No one's gonna think it's your special time travel, and if you take the knob with you, then nobody's gonna like make off with your time travel device. So I think that's what I'm going to go with is a Bedknobs and Broomsticks time travel bed knob.
I like, again, because this is an audio medium, you can't see, but both Meg and I made the like motion.
Yeah. Well, because there is a specific motion in the movie where you have to like twist it a certain number of times and tap it. So like I couldn't mention it without doing that gesture. Yeah.
For me, I was trying to think of something practical that wouldn't take up a ton of room like the DeLorean does in the movies. Like they're always trying to hide it, and it just seems like oh yeah.
Down too, like
for mine though could break down, but I also thought like you stand a better chance of, as long as you pretty much stick to like the 20th century, you're okay. I wouldn't want to go too far back anyway, but I think a motorcycle would be really cool. Kind of almost like a Ghost Rider type thing. It would look cool. You can pretty much get into tight spaces with it. Picturing like flames shooting out the tires. So I'm going motorcycle for mine.
Very cool. I like it.
All right. So last question. We can all agree that we don't want to see a remake, but let's say it was your job and you absolutely had to cast a new Back to the Future movie with the same characters. Who are some of the actors that you would love to see pop up in it? Meg, I'm going to start with you.
I spent probably more time than I should have thinking about this. So I started with Marty, obviously, and I was thinking Tom Holland really fit the bill for me. And then I was trying to think, like, again, as we said, Christopher Lloyd is such a doc, like it's sort of hard to think of who it would be. And I went with Richard Ayoade from the IT Crowd.
He'd be hilarious.
Because he does, like, if you've seen his character Moss in the IT Crowd, he does that really, like, nerdy, kind of off-the-wall kind of character really well. So I really thought that would kind of be, and then a little more diverse. It doesn't all have to be a white cast. Then for Lorraine, I was thinking Tatiana Maslany from Orphan Black. Again, I think she's one of those people who she has, like, a really good range, and it would be interesting to see her do the 16-year-old and the mom, because in Orphan Black, she did that kind of thing. Yeah. And then for George, I was thinking like Ryan Reynolds, right? Like if I can cast anybody, somebody who's like really, he's just really funny, right? And I think that like George is that really funny. I was like, that would be great. That would be great. And then for Biff, Zac Efron was Biff. That's my cast.
Okay.
Right
yeah,
there.
that would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really did think about this a lot more.
I really thought about this way too much.
I had a hard time. I was like, what? Who are actors nowadays? My mind went blank. I was thinking like for like I don't know, like I thought of weird people. So like I was for George, I was like Eddie Redmayne, because again he's kind of quirky in the same way that, not the same way as Crispin Glover, but he's got a very interesting face and he acts in quirky roles all the time. But then I was thinking also like, oh, what if we like sort of like the new Ghostbusters, which I loved, and I know a lot of people didn't love it, but I was like, what if you like gender swapped everything? And so I was like, well, what about like Maisie Williams could play Marty McFly's character? That's Arya Stark from Game of Thrones. I was like, oh, we could get like Kate McKinnon to play the Doc character, because again, that's sort of similar to what her character was like in Ghostbusters. I don't know, but I didn't go much farther than that. I was having a real blank moment with modern day actors in my brain, but I like your choices, Meg. I think there's some good.
I really like the idea, Kate, of switching it up a little bit and making it maybe turning Marty into a female character. I think Maisie Williams would be great in that role as Marty.
I think
she's fantastic. Meg, our choices are actually kind of similar. So I also ended up casting Tom Holland as Marty McFly. It's just,
nice.
I think it's a no-brainer. He still looks like he's a teenager, even though he's not. You could believe that, if he's got to get into a fight with, the Biff character, that, he'll be able to hold his own. So I think right there, it makes him a perfect Marty McFly. I also went with something a little bit different for my Doc Brown, though. I went with Dave Chappelle just because one, he's hilarious. Two, he's not in nearly enough movies. And three, I think that he could pull off kind of being this eccentric scientist. I think just like if you watch any of his stand-up specials where he questions stuff and just his mannerisms and everything, I think he'd be hilarious and fantastic. I think him and Tom Holland would be really funny together. And I noticed that sorry, Meg, you did cast Biff Tannen. I went with a little bit of a different way, with more of a non-traditional actor. I'm going with NFL player JJ Watt. He was on Kate's like, I don't know who that is. But he's actually really funny. He hosts that new like tag show on TV, and he hosted SNL earlier this year, and he was really funny. So here you have a stereotypical, he's a huge guy, so he kind of looks like that big high school jock who would be a bully. So I'm casting JJ Watt. I think it'd be really good.
I like it. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us today, Kate. Is there anything that you want to share before we wrap up today?
Sure. So probably listeners know I am part of Capital City Press, which is the EPL's way that we support local writers. And we do have an event coming up on July 21st online at 7:30 p.m. So we call it Capital City in Conversation. It is the start of a new series, hopefully, where we sit down with local writers or musicians or artists and people in the community to talk about things that are going on in the community. And so this one coming up on the 21st is with Capital City Press writer Marty Chan, Capital City Records musician Martin Kerr, and local blogger and social media strategist Linda Huang. And we're going to talk about connecting with our community during this COVID-19 crisis and how they've all been doing that in various ways. So if you go to the EPL website and look up Capital City in Conversations, you can see the thing and the link to register, which is where you'll get the Zoom link to it that'll get you on there. So that's the 21st. That's the next big thing. And hopefully we'll do more of those in the future, and eventually one day in person with a real live audience. So that'll be fun.
For sure. Well, we hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you haven't yet, we encourage you to hit the subscribe button so you automatically get new episodes, and please also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Even more importantly, please tell a friend about the show. Yeah,
please do. And don't forget that we'll have a link to everything that we talked about in our show notes. You'll see lots of pretty much anything Back to the Future related in our catalog, we're going to have on those notes. So we'd love to hear from our listeners. So, of course, you can reach us on Twitter at epl.ca or email us at podcast@epl.ca. And of course, we covered the Back to the Future series today, but if there's another series that you want us to cover in the future, let us know. Guaranteed in 2021, we will be talking about Lord of the Rings, and also guaranteed Kate will be back for that episode, because I don't think she'd let us not.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.